All right. Well, if you're here already, I appreciate that you guys decided to show up on time, not even on kayaker time. Um, for those that don't know, assume the reason you're here is because you saw the Instagram post. But for those that don't know, the main reason I wanted to do this is just a lot of you guys send in some really great questions, videos on Instagram, just like great things I'd love to answer or dive into. But a lot of times those questions just get like lost in story tags, or I realize that like a lot of things went into my hidden requests for some reason. So yeah, wanted just a place that I could like really engage into this, and rather than trying to like put it all in and do shorts or whatever, it's just like somewhere I can actually engage, and then also be able to chat through everything. But if you're already here, I appreciate that. And if you sent in written question video clips already, I appreciate it, considering that we haven't actually done this before. I did a lot of test runs, so I'm optimistic that I got everything optimized for success. But like anything, probably gonna beat her through some things, and we'll all learn it together. First, any tips on the kickflip? The good news is that is one of the written questions, and I actually have a whole section on doing the kickflip. Before I actually dive into the submitted question and clips, I'm going to give people that wanted to be here and wrote in questions a second to potentially, in case they have any internet problems or something. So until that point, I feel like there's a clip that everybody absolutely needs to see, and that is this clip of the Ninja Alex on the Indus. Where'd it go? For those that have not seen this, look like. Um, let's see here. So this is the way Malupa used to be. Now this is about 5 feet lower water than Alec had, but Malupa used to look like this. It was two massive holes back to back. As you can see, this is me. I got rid of that. So this is what it used to look like. Just absolutely savage. Two holes into each other. Like this is the rapid was so big it couldn't even like fit on the full screen. This is Scott Lindgren when he was filming the River Runner. Like that's that same rapid, but a lot higher than what I had. This is probably closer to the levels that Alec had, but I believe it was 2022. There was an absolutely savage flood. Am I too quiet? Oh, did I forget to turn the audio off on that one? Does that sound better? Yeah, definitely let me know if the mic isn't working well or anything, because I tested this a lot. But here, let's turn this mic up a bit. Does that sound better? Okay, I actually think that I forgot to turn off the audio from the clip. Does that sound better now? Because I put in a bunch of layers. You actually turn off the audio itself, and I think that I beatered and forgot to do it on that one. Okay, appreciate it. Like I said, it's all gonna be a learning curve. But yeah, that's what Malupa used to look like. And then in 2022, it flooded. It blew out the holes, and now it is just those three absolutely massive waves back to back that just look amazing. And then when you watch Alex clip, he gets so much air, and I just so badly want to go there and try to kickflip it just because it looks amazing. Jeremy Nash said that he did try to kickflip it, but I think he got a little swallowed on the wave. With a wave like that, if anybody has ever tried filming on the Zambezi, you know that trying to film big water, like something epic like that, like the fact that Alec actually nailed that, I'm so jealous, because whenever you try to film on big water, you can get the biggest air or the biggest kickflip of your life. You're going to go back the next day, like, I want to go film it, and you can do 30 laps to not get the same thing. So I'm very stoked that Alec has that clip. And the other reason I wanted to show Malupa is I couldn't believe it's already been 6 years since I ran it, because it was a Facebook memory yesterday. Hopefully I've got the audio off this time. Let me know if the audio is on in this one. But yeah, shocked that this has already been 6 years. Yeah, it was a great day. Alright, because I talk for so long, I should probably dive into the things that people actually sent in. The first thing what I'll do is I'll get into the I'm going to get into the written questions, and then we'll get into the submitted clip, just because you guys sent in a lot of good stuff, and as you can tell, I already talked for a long time. I'm actually going to go ahead and do the full clips instead, because there's some good questions here. So this, turn on full main. Oh, don't do this to me. Oh, did the clips unlink? Okay, that's gonna be extremely unfortunate. Please tell me that this is... Oh, it just completely unlinked all of the clips that I had set up. Wow. That is extremely unfortunate. I had everything laid out. Okay, so that clip works. Why did you do this? Okay, I think I've got it figured out. So first thing I'm going to get into is a question. So let's go ahead and get full screen back on. Like I said, we're going to beat it through this a little bit. We're gonna be a learning curve. So starting with the written questions, one of the first questions I got was advice on hearing on the river, getting beta, and things like that. For those that don't know, I'm 70% deaf, and a big part, I don't wear hearing aids on the river for a couple different reasons. One, like earplugs, if I had, even though there are waterproof hearing aids, they would just fall out. I would probably lose them in 2 seconds. But also, I feel like it would just be overwhelming even trying to wear hearing aids on the river, because the river would be so loud. I remember one time in Uganda, I by accident kept my hearing aids on while we were filming something in Flatwater, and just the sound of forward paddling was just like, this is overwhelming. So I don't wear hearing aids in the Whitewater. But the advice in terms of like hearing on the river and dealing with getting lines and things like that, obviously I assume if you have hearing loss, you should be able to read lips, which I think is a massive benefit when it comes to having hearing loss, just being able to read lips on the river, because people can be on the other side of the river and I can be getting the beta from them and things like that. One of my favorite experiences actually from that, and Brian always loved to tell us, when we were in India and the river was like, we thought maybe it was going to be flash flooding. We were trying to get down the river really like smooth but fast so we could get off the water, and Nick was on the side trying to yell the beta, and nobody could hear it. I was like, no, guys, don't worry, I'll do this. And then I just read his lips. He gave us the full layout, and then I was able to relay it to that guy, to the rest of the group. So, yeah, in terms of being deaf, kayaking's not a bad sport for it. But in terms of dealing with trying to, if you're on a river and you're the person that's trying to get the beta and you have the hearing loss, honestly, what I usually like to do is I like to try to be as close as possible to the person. Something you can also do is you can tell the person that's leading the group, it's like, hey, can you make sure you're looking at me, or come next to me when you're explaining the beta, so that way they know to engage with you, because everyone else can probably hear from further away. So that generally, whether, even even just asking them to be looking at you so you can read their lips, or say like, hey, don't tell the beta until I get close enough that I can actually hear you. That's probably the best way to do it. In the end, I imagine most people you're paddling with will know that you have hearing loss and do the best they can to engage. Definitely let me know if the audio ever goes savage again, because like I said, I tested this like 10 times, and then when I went live a few minutes ago, it literally just started screeching. So yeah, keep me updated on that, because I'll talk for an hour and then realize that the audio is bad because I forgot to look at the chat. All right. Trying to find the questions without clips. So one question I had was, how do I find people to kayak with in Connecticut? I unfortunately have not paddled a ton in Connecticut, so I don't necessarily know off the top of my head people that are currently paddling there. But I did reach out to David Silk, who grew up paddling there, and he said, oh gosh, I meant to write this down. He had a Facebook group that he recommended. He said you could join the Where's the Whitewater At Facebook group, and then you could message where you're from and the type of paddling you're trying to do. The person that asked this question did mention that they tried to find some Facebook groups. Another way you could do it is, a lot of times depending on where you are. Sometimes at colleges, there'll be local paddlers that will be doing some form, like that are in the college that'll be teaching some form of kayaking class or some kayaking clubs. So sometimes universities have it. Like good examples, like Cash and Shirley are doing that in Idaho right now. So like there's sometimes the colleges will have programs or classes that are being taught by local paddlers. That's one way you can kind of reach out and see if anything like that is happening at the moment. But yeah, that Facebook group, Where's the Whitewater At, was what David Silk recommended getting into. And he knows a lot of the people in that area still as well. So if you wanted to reach out to David Silk, I'm sure he can answer some more questions about that. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Trying to find the questions with the out clips. Another good question somebody had was, I was wondering whether your knife is attached to the outside of your life jacket or the inside of it, or if I even have one with me. The quick answer that will then turn into a very long answer, I'm sure, is I always have a knife with me in some capacity. Even with my freestyle vest, I like to have at least one small fold-up one. But in my creek vest, and maybe one of these days I'll have to do a breakdown of what's in my life jacket, but I always have at least a folding knife, but I also have a multi-tool with me just because you never know. Like, it's nice to have both. At the very least, having some form of knife is really important. I like to have the multi-tool as well because, you know, if I like messing with the GoPro mounts or somebody needs to tighten a screw in their boat, or, you know, just having the option of those other things, you know, you need to work on the stove if you're out in the middle of nowhere. So I really like to have both a multi-tool, but I also really like to make sure that I also have a folding knife in my life jacket because it's quicker to access for when you need it. A huge reason why having a knife super accessible, number one, is really that if you throw a rope to somebody and the rope gets snagged on something or the person gets wrapped in the rope, you need to be able to cut that rope very quickly. It doesn't happen often, but you know, having it there, it needs to be very easy to access. And even if you're doing freestyle, you know, it's always really important to have a knife with you because you never know. Like at stakeout, anywhere there's a tow rope involved, we always make sure there's not only like there's knives around, but most importantly, the knife is on shore with the person that's dealing with the rope. So that way, if somebody were to get caught in the rope, at, you know, Molly or bus heater or wherever it is, you need to be able to cut that rope because when those ropes are tied off, it can be super sketchy and get super wrapped. Seen it lots of times. We used to do that on the Nile specials. So it's always good, even doing freestyle, if there's going to be any ropes involved, to have a knife with you. But I really like to have it just in case. There's a lot of different things that I just find this folding knife is a lot quicker to access. A multi-tool can sometimes be a little more awkward. In terms of the somebody asked a knife I recommend, I don't have one that like I particularly choose over the other. I just like to have one folding knife with me. In terms of having the knife inside the life jacket instead of outside, even though it's in my life jacket, I have it as one of the most accessible things in the life jacket. The reason why I don't have it on the outside of the life jacket, there are some better, you know, designs, but that like some people like to have it on the outside, mainly Swiftwater people, but I really don't like to have a knife on the outside of my life jacket because one, simply just for annoyance, it can get caught when you're like hiking through jungles and stuff like that, branches, and things get caught because even the most like sleek ones still kind of get caught. But also sometimes, you know, it again doesn't happen often, but you can get a knife that's out there kind of stuck on some branches or a tree or anything you're ducking. It's a little more niche, but particularly if you're out of your boat, it can get caught on something. And then another thing that has happened in the past, I can't say it's happened to me, but there have been times that people have a knife on the outside of their life jacket, and then when they're getting beat down in a feature, they have actually gotten cut by the knife from the knife coming out, and just, you know, as it's coming out, somehow it hit your hand or something like that. So I just find that a quick zip and pulling out the knife, keeping it easy access, is just as fast as having it outside of the life jacket. But on top of that, there's a few safety benefits when it comes to keeping it on the inside. But yeah, I keep a knife with me all the time, and then also a multi-tool just in case. Moving on. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. next one we'll move into is from, I'm going to beater a lot of these names, by the way. I apologize. We can blame it on me being deaf, and I probably wouldn't hear it properly in person anyway, but I apologize in advance, and I'm definitely going to beater some of these names. But from Andre Cotto, he said, I want to know how to paddle well for racing. What is the best technique to go fast? If you could explain the stroke and how to use your legs, I appreciate it. So, real quick, let me check it. Is the audio sounding good to you guys? Because yeah, like I said, I talked for an hour, then realized that there's savage noise that I'm not meaning to. So, moving into the forward stroke, let me just pull this up. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. So, for the forward stroke, in the end, the quick answer to that is quality over quantity as always. Regardless if you're racing, if you're creek boating, if you're doing big water, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to be somebody that wants to do creek racing to realize the importance of why you should really focus on learning a really proper forward stroke, because the difference between having a good forward stroke can be, you know, making that hard ferry or dangerous ferry, getting to someone quicker, making the line a lot smoother. So it's just because, you know, if you're somebody that just likes to river run, doesn't mean you should count yourself out when it comes to very much learning a proper forward stroke technique. For me, the transition where I really tried to figure out how to get like the best forward stroke possible was, we had finished up the 2011 Grand Prix, which was, you know, 25 of the best paddlers, invitation only. I was 17. I didn't end up winning any of the events. It's a 5-stage event. I got second in the races. I think Evan Garcia won all the races, and I got second in all the freestyles. Benny Marr beat me on all of those. It's the last time I let him beat me, I think. But that was freestyle and racing combined, and so after the 5 stages, I had the best overall, so I won. But going into the 2012 Grand Prix in Chile, it was only going to be race stages, going to be 5. It was head-to-head, time trials, giant slalom, all that. Actually, I don't think we ended up doing a giant slalom, but either way, it was all going to be races. I wasn't going to have the freestyle to kind of give me the buffer, so I knew that my current technique after 2011 was not going to be good enough, so I worked really hard on trying to get a better forward stroke. It also didn't hurt that, you know, my dad growing up, you know, he was a slalom Olympian, but he also, you know, he crushed like all the extreme races, and he had amazing technique. So it did not hurt that I had him also coaching me. But the main thing is very much learning quality over quantity, because you'll notice, especially when you watch people like, you know, especially Gerd Solstice was a good example of somebody that when he was like at his prime, he was such a beast where it doesn't even look like he's trying. But he had so much power that, you know, you could do 20 strokes, but his 10 strokes were just as good, if not way better. So the main thing is just try to learn quality over quantity. So here's like a good example. Like here's 2011. This is not the proper technique. I'm showing how I used to race. This is obviously just you know, Whitewater, and you know, I'm still just kind of cruising. But you know, the technique has changed a lot from then to now. So, you know, it's just like constantly sprinting super hard, putting in a bunch of strokes, but that don't actually end up benefiting me when it comes to going faster. This was the Latuque race. It was basically a minute and a half of, like, I don't know how this was actually a race course. It was savage. And then, of course, the end of the course goes into this huge hole that I think, at the end of this race, I think there were 22 swims. And that's and that's all the best paddlers. So that was a savage race. Here's a good example of how I used to race. This is the 2010 green race. And you can see, you know, it looks like I'm paddling as hard as I can, and I'm just putting in a bunch of just these mini strokes, and it's like, oh, you're paddling so hard. But then, in the end, somebody that's doing 5 strokes, or half as many strokes that are good, will go a lot faster than me here. Here's this is the 2023, so you can see a big difference. Now, obviously, I learned a lot of technique in between the two, but you can tell a big difference just in the technique and the style. Let me get the full screen going on here again. Dun, dun. So when it comes to the forward stroke, the 2 biggest things that you really want to make sure to focus on is obviously a vertical paddle is really important, but torso is the main thing that can be the difference between very high quality stroke or short kind of crazy strokes. So when it comes to the forward stroke, the key is you want to get as much torso as possible. You're not turning your head, but you're turning a whole midsection. And then when you're reaching up for the stroke, you're trying to reach as far forward as you can. The easy way to think about it is in at the toes, out at the hip. And when you're doing those forward strokes, a lot of times when people are racing, they're just kind of in here, short stroke, kind of like those first clips that I showed. The key is you want to reach as far as you can, arm all the way extended, put the paddle in at the toes, you have full torso, and then as you're pulling that stroke, you're reaching all the way back to the other side, so you're getting maximum power rather than just using your arms. So you're engaging your whole core and everything at the same time. A good way my dad always explained it growing up to other people as well as myself is, when you think about starting like a lawnmower, you're not just doing these quick little strokes, you're like pulling as hard as you can to get the best chance. So yeah, into the toes, out of the hips, full torso, and then as you pull through that vertical paddle, you reach all the way back to the other. What's really great, not only are you getting both your arms and your core and you're engaging everything for maximum power, but what's really really nice about learning this technique on top of really learning quality over quantity is a lot of times when you do hard whitewater creeking, but particularly when it comes to creek racing, if you're doing a bunch of little strokes, it can be really hard to get into the rhythm or the timing if you're going into some booths or some waves or some curlers or whatever's in front of you when it comes to racing. What's really nice about doing really good, powerful, high quality strokes is you can be forward paddling, and then as you're doing that big stroke, it leads perfectly into a great position to be able to do a boof or a maneuver or whatever it is. Whereas a lot of times when you do a lot of just kind of like low quality, crazy, like panicky strokes, you can kind of get caught up sometimes trying to go into another move or another booth. So learning quality over quantity really allows you to help get into a better rhythm. The timing going into booths and maneuvers becomes more natural. Obviously the stroke can become more powerful, so you can actually put in essentially less effort and wear out slower. You have to be able to maintain more energy, but you also can just really focus on maximum power into each stroke. I don't think I have any more forward stroke clips. Dun dun dun. Next question is, I've been trying all year to hit a kickflip, but just end up involuntarily throwing myself into a back deck roll instead of maintaining the back face of the blade pressure from Beckett Atkins. Well, the good news is whoever asked to do kickflips earlier is in luck. Gotta pull these up. Kickflip. Got everything laid out, but it's a lot of clips. So when it comes to the kickflip, the main thing that you really want to focus on, like obviously when we're learning kickflips, we just learn to just do kind of a straight back deck roll, just rolling over. But if you want not only maximum air, but also the ability to still have good kickflips even on the smallest wave. I couldn't find a whole lot of my clips on doing kickflips on a small wave, but I've got some of my other ones. Let's start with kickflip at 8. Dun dun dun. Gotta pull off full screen. There we go. Whoa, why did that get moved over? I'm not sure what happened there. So obviously this is the Zambezi, a bigger wave than most people probably have access on their home runs. But when it comes to doing the kickflip, a lot of people when they're going for it, they often just do a straight back deck roll. But the main thing you want to focus on when it comes to doing a kickflip is, even though it's the bigger wave, the same technique still applies even on the smallest wave. But what you want to be doing is you want to get obviously as much speed as possible towards the wave. Doesn't matter if it's small, big, whatever it is. When you're going off the top of the wave, let's say all the demonstration I'll do, kick flipping to the left, you want to have your left blade on the top of the wave, and you actually want to be pulling yourself off the peak of the wave with that stroke. But what's great about doing the kick flip, what I recommend doing is where you're actually pushing on the back side of the blade, not only for the initial part of the kick flip, but also for the recovery, because even though the back deck roll technique where you just do a back deck roll is a good technique for learning You obviously learn that if you're doing air screws and stuff, but the difference between not only going bigger, but also being able to keep your head and body out of the water, pushing on the backside of the blade can make a big difference. Because what happens is you go off the top of the wave, you're pulling, you get that last stroke in, but when you're actually finishing the stroke, the back face actually ends up being in the perfect place to push off of that blade. And what that does is that actually will push the boat up and over your body. Whereas if you're at the peak and you just throw a back deck roll, a lot of times your body will just kind of crash into the wave and you might get a good kickflip, but not near as much air as you could. So by pushing on the back side of the blade, you then push the stern up and over your head. And what that allows you to do is get your head and body out of the water, the boat's coming up and over. But then, so the question is based on, they probably get to this point, but then still can't quite recover from it. You still want to go ahead, as the boat almost comes completely over you, you then use the other blade, the backside of the other blade, to give yourself support to bring the boat down, while at the same time pulling up on your other knee. So this is my offside. But let's get the, why is that? Here, this is playing. So this is, I'm a, oh my gosh. I'm better at lefty kickflips. This is the righty on the golly, obviously. But the same logic applies. So even on the smallest waves, if I were to just go and do a back deck roll, like a normal, like in flat water, I probably would have just done, wouldn't have gotten much air. It's not like I got much air anyway. But by pushing on that blade, you're able to push that stern up and over your head. But right here, even on the smallest waves or the biggest wave, by getting on that other blade, not only do you give yourself the support to bring the boat completely around you, but then at that same time you want to be pulling up on your other knee, which then flattens the boat back under you. So for example, this is the righty, so pulling up to the top of the wave, putting that backstroke in, then I'm pushing the stern up and over my head, and then right here I'm supporting myself with that left blade and bringing the boat down while also pulling up on my left knee to get the boat back under me. So for a lot of people, I think what they start to have difficulties with, here, let's just go ahead and let this play on repeat, is a lot of times they get good at the pushing and getting the boat into the air, but what they often end up doing is from there they go all the way back and kind of just sit on the back deck like this, and it can be really hard to recover from a kickflip at that point or finish it, because you're kind of in this awkward position back here and it's not a whole lot to roll off of. So the key is to push on that backside, but as the kickflip's trying to complete, you can actually sit up a little bit, use that other blade to support yourself, and then pull your knee back under you to flatten the boat back out. Here, let's see if we can find, I don't know why these got off-centered. Hopefully that's not every clip. Yeah, optimistic. I'm going to pull this back to the middle. I don't know why everything got small again. Anyway, so this is a good example of right now, that push is what gets that boat up into the air. Right here, launching off the top of the wave, pulling that stroke, getting, as soon as your body's completely past the peak, that's when you can push on that backside of the blade, push the stern up and over your head. And then this one I did, reach back to finish it, but that's because I wanted to keep the boat straighter with that much air. But on a smaller wave, you wouldn't have any room to actually do that. Let's find another molly kickflip. Oh man, why did everything get put off center and offside? Half of this stream is just going to be me resizing these clips. At least they're still there. So again, yeah, get as much speed as possible. Put that stroke off the peak of the wave. Pull yourself off the top. Then as you reach the highest point, put that back, push hard on the back side of the blade. Put that stern up and over your head. But then as it's time to bring it down to complete it, that's when you want to bring the other knee up under you and support yourself with the other blade. Let's do a few more times on the golly just to... this is going to get smoother over time, I hope. But yeah, so that's the main thing for the kickflip. Is there anyone else have any questions on the kickflip before I move off of this subject? In the end, the nice thing about the kickflip is you can do it on the smallest wave. Doesn't matter if you're somebody that's going to the Zambezi or you're going to the golly or you're the Nantahala, like even like the smallest rivers. There's always at least one wave you should be able to kickflip. And the key is just try as many as you can. Keep practicing, 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 because the more you try them, even on the smallest waves or even the least perfect wave, the better it's going to become, and the more places you're going to be able to kickflip. And for those that want, this same technique applies when you're doing an entry move on a hole. A lot of times people just kind of throw themselves into a back deck roll, but if you allow yourself to push off of that blade, you can get much more air and allow yourself to stick it in more features. So if you're doing competitions and things like that. All right, let's get off of the kickflip. Okay, on to the next question. All right. Next one is, I have 3 questions for you. The first, getting out of your kayak. When I paddle with people that kayak for a living, have been kayaking on Class 5 for years, they somehow manage to get out of their boat super fast. They just seem to stand up in their boats and have perfect control while doing it every time. Is there a technique to this? Would be cool to hear this in a context of a rescue as well. So when it comes to getting out of your boat in a hard place, that is very much one of those things that if you don't practice it in some way, in places that you can control, practicing it in a safe way, you're never going to learn the techniques that will be necessary if you know you need to help someone, or you have to get out in a hard spot to set safety, or you have to get out quickly in a hard spot to rope someone out of a hole, or rope someone that's swimming, or someone pinned. If you don't practice it, it's like so many things in kayaking, whether it's surfing out of features, seal launches, boofing holes, whatever it is, getting out in hard places is one of those things that if you don't try practicing it on your home run in the places where you can really try out different places, you're never going to learn the techniques that could be the difference between being able to get out quick enough and help someone or set safety in a certain spot. For me, I always, tried to, growing up, I would always try to find the most difficult places to get out, whether for fun or maybe I wanted to get out and walk up and do a rapid again, or, shooting photos and video, whatever it was. Getting out in a hard spot, I would always try to find the most challenging spot instead of the easiest. And I think through the years of messing around with that, I take pride in myself feeling like there's a lot, I can get out in some really hard places. And sometimes that's just a fun thing to do, but there have been times where I think it has been the difference between, I've had a few experiences where I've gotten out in a hard spot that, because I roped someone out, can't say for sure, but I could have saved or might have saved their life by getting out in a hard spot. A good example, unfortunately don't have the footage anymore. I really wish I had this clip. But in 2014, when we were at the Rey del Rio in Mexico, unfortunately, my 2014, 2015, and 2016 hard drive got stolen out of my car in Hawaii right before I could get everything backed up. So I never made the mistake of not backing up anything anymore. But I don't have this clip anymore. I really wish I did. But in 2014, practicing for Rey del Rio, we were at the Agua Azul section, which is basically, it's a fun slide into like a pretty decent U-shaped hole. It goes directly into another slide that goes directly off of like a 15 to 20 footer that's not quite vertical. And it was almost dark. It was high water. We were just getting one last lap real quick. It was like 6 or 7 of us, but Rafa and I were in the back. He was right behind me. He ended up getting stuck in that U-hole at the top. And what happened is he was just getting beat down, and I was surfing a wave directly below him, trying to keep an eye on him, seeing if he was going to be able to surf out. And while surfing the wave, I was able to stand up in my boat and grab, it was kind of not mud, but not rock, but I was able to stand up in my boat while surfing the wave and get onto shore and then rope him out. Now, do I recommend everybody does that in a situation like that? No, but I felt extremely confident in my ability to do it. And what happened was I was able to get out quickly, and he had already been stuck for like 45 seconds, maybe longer. He was getting tired, and I was able to rope him out of the hole and just pull him in his boat out to shore. If he had swam, or if I had just continued going downstream, that would have been probably another extra minute or 2 minutes to get up to him. But on top of that, if he had swam in that hole, maybe he would have gotten body research in that hole. Or even if he swam down, it was high water, would he have survived going over those next 2 slides? Maybe, probably. Well, there's no way to actually know because I was able to get out quickly and rope him out. So it's times like that, those seconds really matter. So it is totally worth, for a lot of different reasons, learning how to get out in difficult places, because it can be the difference between getting out, helping someone quickly, And also, like a good example of where people learn to get out in hard places is like, on the Zambezi Fisher, my dad growing up, when he was a photo boater back in like the 80s on the Kennebec, Clay Wright on the Golly, they would always say that their challenge to each other, the people that work, the guys or the video boaters, photo boaters, they would always try to kind of outdo each other on getting out in the hardest places possible to get that different angle they haven't seen. And I try to do that a lot as well with video and photo, and that's just a way of where it's not like it's not 100% necessary, but it can be the difference, getting that amazing angle, or by having the technique to get out in hard places, actually getting out faster and in more places to then help someone that's potentially in trouble, or set safety in a place that other people couldn't access. But it is important, to when you're learning and figuring this out, obviously good footwear is also just as important, but you want to do this in a place that like it's safe and controlled. Like you shouldn't be doing this in the most dangerous places, because if you were to slip and fall in, then everybody has to deal with you, and that's just not a good situation. So I don't have that clip of Rafa and I in 2014, unfortunately, but what I do have is a clip from 2019 when I was helping coach the Keener program. There's a wave in Coliseum. It's a very similar kind of idea of what happened in 2014, but this was just us messing around with the Keener program. But it's kind of the same idea of what I had to do to rope Rafa out. So this is at the bottom of Coliseum, and basically, it's just a fun challenge, but doing fun things like this is where you learn the techniques that end up being something you may have to apply to the real world later on. So this is just, it's Big Water Beatdown Thursday, so the goal is just to do the craziest thing, but it's, do you need to go practice this in dangerous spots? No, but a place like this where you can do it safely, these are the places that you learn the techniques to actually apply it when things actually go wrong or serious. So that is, I have talked a lot about the situation, but when it comes to getting out of your boat in hard places, there's obviously a couple different ways people do it, but the kind of the easier, kind of quick answer, like overall, is you definitely want to make sure when you're getting out, the main thing that we focus on is you're always trying to keep your weight center over the boat. So, and that's both directions. So you're not trying to like lay back on the stern of the boat while you're trying to get out, which could make you flip the boat or slide off the back. So you're always trying to keep your weight forward, and you're always trying to stay centered in the boat. But when you're actually getting out of the boat, the key is when you stand, whatever, so let's say I'm getting out on River Right, so I'm getting out on the left side of the boat. I'm trying to put my right foot in the center of the boat, so that way the boat is still stable, because if you were to put your foot off to the side of the boat, even on the inside, you might just make the boat unstable, potentially tip over, and you're definitely not going to be able to put your full weight down. So if I'm getting out the left side of the boat, I'm trying to put my right foot as center of the boat as possible, both forward and back, but also side to side, so that way I can put my full weight down and stand up on the boat, still be stable, and then step out onto shore. A lot of times when people are trying to get out, if you put both feet over the side of the boat, that's fine when you're getting out in shallow water, but sometimes you can be getting out and the boat flips or a boil hits it. What's really nice about keeping it stable in the middle is it just gives you more balance, but you're still very much, connected to the boat. You're still in the boat. Another thing you can do as well, again, if you're getting out on the left side of the boat, you often want to keep your paddle as close by as possible. You're holding onto the rock. You can actually grab onto the front of the cockpit to help you do that initial stand up. So that way, if you're pushing on the side of the boat, sometimes, it can be a little less stable and a little less predictable. So if you're getting out in a really hard spot, it is really important to try to get that weight over the middle of the boat, and you can use the cockpit to kind of pull yourself up to get into that stance to then get out on the side. So in the end, that's the main thing. There's like a couple, there's a lot of different places that you get out, whether it's, you're getting out onto boulders, you're getting out onto a cliff, you're getting out in muddy areas, it varies. But the main goal when getting out in hard places, the reason why we do it fast, is we're always keeping our weight centered over the boat, not only when leaning forward, but also when we go to stand up, we're always making sure that our whatever foot's still in the boat, or even both feet, if you stand up, are as centered as possible to help keep the boat as stable as possible. yeah, 100% like anything else, surfing out of features, hand rolled, steel launches. It's one of those things that you just got to practice it in a controlled, safe environment. So that way when the time comes where you actually have to do something serious, you have the techniques ready. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. What's the next question? Dun, 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 dun. Second question is about freestyle. Would love you to go over the transition phase when linking a Space Godzilla into a loop. Just can't figure that combo out. What exactly do you do after that first Space Godzilla to set you up for the loop? So the space loop is obviously one of the most fun things to do. I actually could not find a clip of me doing a space loop recently, so I had to outsource to Nick and Mason. Dun, dun, dun. So here we go. Okay, so this Nick at NOC. So the space loop, the main thing that you really want to focus on, I'll actually go ahead and put Mason's on as well because Mason goes super big. So when it comes to the space loop, the main mistake that a lot of people make is when they're going for the Space Godzilla, they often end up, oh yeah, I forgot that I actually have a 3D printed Antix 3. I need to get a 3D printed Rockstar because I help with this, but it'll still get the job done. But a lot of times, I feel like you guys got to come up with a name for this guy, but a lot of times when people are going for the space loop, what they'll actually end up doing is they'll try to do the first space and they'll often end up with their bow pointing really far off and then trying to lean forward and get it to engage. When it comes to the space loop, it's extremely important that your bow stays facing as straight upstream as possible. And what you're actually doing is as you land, you're trying to get that bow to go down as long as possible before you engage for the loop. So another thing people do is they go for that Space Godzilla, even if they point straight, they go to try to plug right away and nothing happens. And the reason for that is they're getting their weight forward too quickly. So when it comes to that first Space Godzilla, you want to keep your body as centered as possible. As you come around, keep it as straight upstream as possible. And when it comes to this combo, wave combos, or a lot of things, if you've ever done like a round off to backflip, it almost feels like there's a long time in between them, even though they're linked. When it comes to actual, wave combos, hold combos, it actually feels like more time in between than you would imagine. Like you actually have to let the first trick finish, get through the process, and then engage the second one. A lot of times when people are learning the combo, they try to do the second trick too fast before they even complete the right technique for the first one. So again, really try to keep that Space Godzilla as straight upstream as possible. It helps to, when you're landing that first Space Godzilla, you want to wait before you bring your weight forward, and you're actually bringing that bow down and then pushing the bow through the water as long as possible, and then you throw the second loop. So if you do it too fast, if you just do the first Space Godzilla and try to engage right away, a lot of times your bow will get kicked out. You'll not quite engage it. So as you're coming down on that first one, you're letting that bow go down, 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 and then engage. Nick actually has, Mason was pointing even straighter. Sorry, I was trying to change the source. So again, when Nick does it, you really keep that bow straight upstream, and you're just pushing the feet through the water as long as possible before engaging for the loop. So it's going to feel longer than it's going to feel like, a second or two or even longer, but you need to actually finish that first Space Godzilla, let the bow keep traveling, let that bow get underwater, keep going, and then that's when you pull the second loop. So just think about it a little bit further apart in your head, and the more you kind of allow the first Space Godzilla to finish while pointing upstream, getting that bow in the water, that's how you engage the second one. Because a lot of times what people do is they do that first one, and then they get right to here, and they either flatten the boat out, or they just throw their weight forward too fast and just stay forward, and they don't allow the bow to keep going underwater. So you almost want to think about it like you're doing one extra bow end after the space before engaging the loop. I believe I only had one. This is the clip got kind of weird, but this is the only space loop I can find of myself at the moment. But you look like there's actually a long space in between. Long space. But so basically, yeah, get that Space Godzilla as corked and straight upstream as possible. let the Space Godzilla finish, get your weight forward, bring that bow all the way down, almost like an extra bow end, and then engage the loop. So just spread it out a little more than you think, and that'll really help potentially get you not only bigger air, but hit them more often. All right. Next one is for the back loop. I just keep flipping onto my head and can't seem to get that bow around after getting into the air. Any tips on closing that trick out? What's funny is the only back loop clip I could find of myself was from 2007. I think I need to go into the house and go through my box of like 300 terabytes of footage and just find some old clips. Let's go ahead and do back loop. Dun, dun, dun. I forgot that this is a full clip. So this is from 2007. What's actually funny about this is I think that's the last time I actually threw a back loop McNasty in competition. I was 13, and when I was competing with Jason Craig, this is what we had to do to beat each other because we were just constantly pushing each other to get better, and this is what we needed to do. And we were getting close to the men's scores these days, which was awesome. But a better example clip that I have is Tomas Saplitsky. So this is a better example of the back loop. Basically, the main mistake that people make, and I'll actually do this with the full screen for a sec, the main mistake people make is when they go for the back loop, what they often do is they just kind of let the stern catch, and they go almost all the way, and they're coming back down, or they're almost completely onto their heads, and then trying to sit up. The key with the back loop is you still want to plug as hard as possible, but you actually want to start pulling up on your knees and sitting up when the boat is at its highest, so that way you're almost fully completed as you're coming back down, and then the green water will help you finish it. So a lot of times what people do is they come around, and then as they land, they don't start sitting up until the bow's already down, and then they just go out of the hole like that. So the key is to plug as hard as possible as you're up in the air, and then do the full sit up, pull your knees to your chest, before the boat really even starts coming back down, so that way it completely finishes almost before the trick is done. Tomas does a really good back loop, so that's why I got a clip of him, because he has a better clip. So you see he's already pulling on his knees, sitting up before the boat's even coming back down. He almost had to completely finish before he even lands, and that's obviously a big back loop, but that really helps the ability to finish it, because if you wait too long, you'll probably just get shot out of the hole. So the key is to sit up, pull up on your knees, complete it before the boat's even coming back down. All right, moving on. I already did the knife. Somebody from Italy, Filippo Zeggio. Sorry if I said that wrong. I'm going to say a lot of these names wrong, and I apologize for that. He sent an idea of my thoughts on if it'd be cool to have a kayak. It's called Kayak It, like odometer to like track speed information. I think it's a cool idea. I think it's something you put in your boat to like track speed and all that. I think having that information can be fun. It's not quite as applicable as like, you know, runners and things like that, where whenever you're doing, you're always maintaining a pace. That being said, doing something, you know, like the you know, what do they call something like the Fantasy Flash, or you're doing a one-day Stikine and you're kind of just moving downstream constantly, you're not eddying out. But with the amount that you stop while kayaking, I think sometimes a lot of that information, I don't know how useful it would be, but at the same time, there are times it could be cool to have that extra information, especially if you're doing something like in Cali. I remember when the GoPro first, you could get your speed on it. I did it for Tenaya, and I think we got up to like 38 miles an hour, or 35 or something like that. But it's cool to have that little extra information. And the main thing that I think that can be really useful for something like that, it'd be fun to we need a better tool for really tracking actual gradient that we lose in a river, because a lot of times, so like even a watch, the watches work really good when you're out of the water. But in the water, the two things that make it really difficult for the watches to be super accurate, unless you put it inside your boat, is if it's based off of temperature, the temperature changes when your arm goes underwater, so it thinks that you've gone up in elevation because it gets colder. Or if it's based off of just pressure, again, the pressure changes when your arm goes underwater. So whenever I've tried to use a watch to properly track stuff like that, it always just kind of, it's harder to track, because it'll be like, you lost 500 feet, but you gained 1,000. So it's just a better way to track elevation would be really cool and really useful. I tried to when I was working with a few brands, I kept trying to get them to change the style of tracking gradient, because that's one thing that would be dope. Curious on your thoughts for the Stealth recall. I've taken it down the box, Big Timber, Rocky Creek runs, and never had an issue. So unfortunately, for those that don't know, we did have to do a recall on the Stealth. Not for the blade, but the connection point from the blade to the shaft. We did a different one than we had in the past. It started off working well, but as time went on, unfortunately, it just didn't hold up to the reliability and quality that we want with our paddles. So that is the reason for that. That connection point, it was different, it was sleek, but unfortunately it just didn't hold up to the strength and quality that we wanted, that we felt comfortable with having out there. So that's why we did the recalls. Definitely a bummer, but we wanted to make sure people have the best products possible, and we can always learn from it and improve. Next one is, I've been a couple times to Uganda and I've seen big rapids like Hypoxia or Kalagala. I've always wondered what is the sensation of descending such monsters. I'm a kayaker, but of course don't have the balls, or I'm not crazy enough to go down such big rapids. When it comes to, I've never actually run Hypoxia. For those that don't know, I've got a photo of, we can pull the back loop off. Where is it at? I've got a photo of Kalagala, or I've got a photo of Hypoxia. This is Brent on Hypoxia. It's not the best photo, but it is a hard rapid to film. If you watch any of Rush Sturge's old like YGP films, there's a lot of this in there, like New Rain, anything like that. But Hypoxia, so on the Nile, there's one of the big rapids, one of the last rapids left after the dam. There's 3 different channels. There's Itunda on one side, there's the Hypoxia in the middle, and then there's Kalagala on the far left. This is going to be a really low quality clip, but this is Kalagala when I was 13. This is low water, and you can run this a lot higher. So this is the furthest left channel. I don't have a clip of Itunda right now, but this is Hypoxia, which is basically a decent sized rapid into an absolutely monster hole. I never actually ended up running it. Maybe I'll have to run it next time I go back. But basically, it's a massive hole that you just aim for the biggest part, and most of the time people end up going through. Sometimes people get like 1 or 2 tumbles and then they go out, but obviously a hole that size, it dished out a lot of beatdowns and swims as well, for sure. But what's funny about, I don't know if it was this day or a previous trip, but one of the funny stories Brent used to tell is he was there with, I think, Tom Dunphy. The first time he was there when he was like 16, and they both ran it, but Tom Dunphy went first, and he did end up getting beat down. And I don't know if he swam right away, got ripped out, but either way, after he got ripped out or swam, whatever it is, I think he lost his helmet, his skirt, his shoes, and his shorts. So he basically came out buck naked, which is hilarious. But it does go into a pool after, so it is okay, and that's why a lot of people are okay running it. But another part that's funny about Hypoxia is, again, there's a lot of different channels. But in order to run Itunda, you have to do one channel over from the entrance to this one. But it's a very blind, kind of, it's like on an island with a bunch of bushes. You can a lot of people by accident trying to go for Itunda ran Hypoxia, and I was always so scared of doing that growing up. Luckily, never had it happen, knock on wood. But the sensation of it, like this, Malupa, in the end, sometimes it can be, pretty straightforward. Like, it can be where you just kind of go in, you get crash, here, let me pull up Malupa for, oh, that's not the right one. Yeah, so when you're going into like features like this size, obviously your main goal is to actually wash through and not get beat down. A lot of times with features this size, you can end up, if you get stuck, sometimes you can do 1 or 2 tumbles and then wash you out. But in the end, the sensation, the best case scenario, what happens is you kind of just crash, you hopefully hold on to your paddle, but it's more just kind of like chaos around you. And especially like if you make it through smoothly, it's just, you just feel like kind of the power around you. It's a lot of times just the big crazy boils, aeration, you're just holding on to your paddle as tight as possible. A lot of times, sometimes what'll happen is you'll like get your paddle start to kind of get ripped out of your hands, and you'll just hold on to it as tight as possible. But sometimes, you just kind of blow through, and it's almost like you don't really feel anything. But there's also those times, that horrible feeling where you take that big hit, you're still got your paddle, everything's fine, but then all of a sudden you start feeling the green water under you, which means that you're moving back upstream, and it means you're about to get beat down. It's never a fun feeling. But yeah, it can kind of vary, depends on how well it goes, the size of it. But in the end, you know, it can feel like almost nothing, or it could be absolutely vicious, or it could be like where you get stuck in Bridge Rapid and break your leg and tear a bunch of muscles and all that fun stuff. So it varies. All right, next question. All right, got a couple questions I'd like to see you cover. How does one get sponsored? Asking as a 17-year-old who's done both freestyle and river running and like sharing his journey on social media. Mainly, is it better to approach brands or wait for them to ask you? So when it comes to, like, that is one question that, you know, it's a great question, and we get it a lot. It's also sometimes not the easiest to answer because there's a lot of different approaches. There's a lot of different ways to try to have a career in kayaking. The first and foremost thing I want to say about when it comes to getting sponsored and trying to have a career in kayaking in some capacity, everybody kind of does their own style and their own way. But it is work, and I know everybody says that about everything, but it does not matter how good you get or the things you complete, the things you do, like whether you run a 100-footer, you win the world championship. I like to say kayaking is only 50% of the equation. No matter how good you get, you will have to work to either get that support, get those sponsors, but you need to find ways to be valuable outside of just being a kayaker, because a lot of times, one, you know, kayaking is a little bit more of a niche sport. You know, the brands in the sport aren't always the biggest, but when it comes to sponsors outside of kayaking, you know, sometimes it can be harder to find a relationship because, you know, kayaking is a smaller sport. Not every brand aligns themselves with a sport like kayaking. But at the same time, being in that niche sport sometimes does have its benefits and value. But like I said, I consider kayaking only to be 50% of the equation, no matter how good you get. Like, a good way to look at it is, a lot of people think, oh, I just won the world championships, whether a junior, senior, or I just ran an iconic 60-footer, or I back freewheeled something, or I got this first descent. Everybody tends to think that is the end of the work. Like, oh, I've gotten to this point, now brands are going to come to me, my life is just about to begin. And those are amazing things that you should be proud of, but what I like to say is those are not actually, that's not the end result, that's just the beginning of the work. And what those can be are tools to allow yourself to approach people and be like, hey, I won the world championships, but now next year I'm looking for support because I want to go to Uganda to train or Uganda or Zambia or Canada because I want to train for this amount of time to get better on waves, to get ready for the Columbus World Championships in 2029 or whatever it is. Or yeah, so so for me, the way I always did it is, like, I've been fortunate enough to have these great results. I've first ascended things, I've run these bigger drops, but I use them as tools to create value for myself, to be like, this is what I have done, and this is what I continue to do moving forward, and this is the support I would like, but this is what I can now deliver to you. So it is worth reaching out to brands. You never, you know, it's always worth a shot. You know, the more you kind of reach out to brands, the more discussion you have, regardless if it works out or not, the more you talk, the better you get at approaching brands and getting better at the terms and really speaking to them. But it is really important when it comes to approaching brands that, even if whether you're asking for gear, money, support, whatever it is, it's really important to approach it with, this is how I can be of value to you, not just saying, I did all this, so it'd be worth it for you to sponsor me. Like, the key is to really focus on why you are of value to them, and you have to create that value somehow. For me, growing up, fortunately, whether you know, my dad helped me make my first edits on Windows Movie Maker when I was 12, and then my parents got me video camera, and I started filming along with my brother-in-law, like filming with Nick. We did a lot of filming growing up. I started making edits. When it comes to kayaking, one of the most valuable things you can do, and one of the best parts about the sport, is when it comes to content, like, it's hard a lot of times for like non-kayakers to access a lot of these places. So that is what's so fun and actually very, very valuable as a kayaker. It is totally worth having some form of ability to create content, whether it's with a GoPro, with a head cam, whether it's $100 video camera or a photo camera. It is worth picking up some form of media, because not only does that allow you to be like, hey, if I can get this support from you to get to the Zambezi, I'm going to be able to deliver this much photos, this much video, and an edit for this much support. You can have your logo at the beginning, or however you want to approach it. But these days, it's always kind of been a fact, but I think even more so these days, what's so great about kayakers is you can be a one-stop shop for brands. We just look for support, but if they get us to where we want to go, we can bring back everything else. And so for me, like when brands support me, I go somewhere and I'm going to get photos, videos, edits, marketing content, whatever it is. Because a big thing when it comes to kayakers, regardless of what brand you're supported by, we often end up under the marketing side of things, because that's essentially what we're doing, especially with social media. So it is worth these days, especially because there's so many cheaper options. Doesn't matter if you have a GoPro 7 or 8. Like, picking up some form of media content, I think, is the biggest game changer when it comes to making a career out of kayaking, because it allows you to get so much useful things. Like, the brands support you, and you can take care of the rest. It is a lot of work. You have to learn how to do it. You have to, even just filming other people. Like, the good way to look at it is, growing up, I had Nick and then and other paddlers, but then obviously with the Sen crew, when we all go together, we will shoot every person. We will get photos, video, drone content, all that, and we each then can go back to our respective. We obviously made edits together, but we could also go to our respective brands and deliver content and be like, here's what I got from the trip, and that will snowball into getting more support for the next trip, or not necessarily more money, but continued support. And if you are somebody that films, but you also surround yourself with other people that create content, you can work together to really create a structure that allows you to work with brands, but then be of value to them, because you are coming back with a lot of useful content, whether the stickers on the boats, what they're asking for, or if it's a kayaking company, whether it's the gear you wear, the paddles you use, the boats you use. I just highly recommend, regardless, even if it's a GoPro 8, being of value in some form of media creation, because that allows you to film these amazing places. Like, why leave it up to chance? Like, why go on a trip with 10 people and only come back with maybe a couple GoPro clips? Like, having the ability to create more content is a huge value when it comes to kayaking, and a way to make yourself valuable to brands. In the end, again, there's a lot of different approaches. Some people, when it comes to the 50-50 thing I was talking about, some people work through the summer teaching, so that way they can travel in the winter. Everybody has their own thing, what they're willing to do. But you do need to find something that works with kayaking, so that way you can be of value to brands. Because just going and running a 100-footer, running a 60-footer, doing your first Royal Flush, whatever it is, that's just not enough. There needs to be more that is done in order to create more value for the brands that you want to work with. And in terms of reach, it's just worth reaching out to brands. If you can, it's always worth trying to find the marketing director for a brand. But if you reach out on Instagram, you're probably going to just end up getting, the social media manager, and they're going to be like, sure, here's an ambassador form, or stuff like that. So if you can, trying to find a contact for the marketing director is always a better step, because that is where kayakers often end up falling under, just because of the type of content we create and the places we go. Don't know if that fully answered the question. And again, I could probably do an entire stream just on this, but maybe I should. But that's kind of to answer that one. That's how I kind of try to think about it. So yeah. Doesn't matter if you're doing the most badass thing, doesn't matter if you're the best kayaker in the world, or you're the best racer, or best freestyler. That's only part of the equation. You have to figure out something that works with that to be of value to brands. And that's part of the fun too. I love that I can go fly drones, shoot photos, make edits, make films, whatever it is. It's all part of the fun. It actually, it makes every day that you go kayaking useful and valuable and just more fun, because you're creating content with your friends that then allows your friends to support the brands that they're with, that then in turn creates more opportunities to go kayaking with their friends. I lost it. Oh, here we go. What is your opinion on plastic versus composite kayak, especially for freestyle? So it depends on what you're doing. When it comes to carbon boat, when it comes to holes, like if you're just doing like freestyle and smaller features, they can be like like they're fun to have. They're lighter, they're stiffer. When it comes to freestyle and holes, without having that flex, sometimes it can feel like a little more volume. It being a bit lighter makes the rotations a little easier. But when it comes to holes, I'd say it's not as important to have a carbon boat. But the big advantage for carbon boats is, where is it at? Where'd it go? Oh, here we go. When it comes to carbon, the biggest difference is when it comes to waves, because that stiffness, for those that don't know carbon boats, they're just really stiff. And what that does, it means that when you're landing tricks or taking off tricks, there's no flex in the boat, so it pops off the water a lot nicer. So when it comes to particularly bigger waves, but even the smallest waves, you'll notice the difference without that flex of really being able to pop those tricks off the water. So when it comes, if you're going to the Ottawa on these smaller waves, or you're going to stake out, or you're in Colorado and Durango, you will notice the difference on even the smallest wave when it comes to taking off and doing tricks, because it just pops off the water without that flex, and obviously it's lighter, so it rotates faster. But I've had carbon boats made that are heavier than plastic boats, so they survive the biggest wave, but it still makes a difference because of that stiffness. So it's mainly just being able to pop off that water, even on the smallest waves. Still working on the transition between out of the small camera to the big one. Next, I'm semi-planning a trip to North America in a year or two. What would be the go-to river time frame be? Thinking a couple months, hopefully work and travel for a decent Class 5 boater, and wanting to surf some big waves while there. So when it comes to being able to kayak full-time while also some form of job, whether it's video boating, safety boating, raft guiding, coaching, there's a couple different places. Depends on what you want access to, because sometimes you only get a weekend off. Depends on how much what you're trying to be able to access. Like a good example of a place to work where you can do both is, you can work on the American in California, which, you're not right next to all the rivers, but if you get a few days off, there might be something in. Some people work in Kernville, California, because it's a decent amount of driving, but you can do a lot of raft guiding, coaching there, and then you do have access to the California runs in the summer if you get a weekend off or something like that. The other best place, some people do the same thing in Columbus, but the thing about Columbus that it runs a lot, and then when the water gets high, you get some bigger waves, and you're not as close to a lot of creeking, but still accessible. And then the Ottawa River is another great place, because that, there's no such thing as the water off, there's just different water levels. And there's always something to surf, always something to do, and in the end, there's always, even in the summer, there's always so much fun kayaking to be had. But you also, again, if you get a weekend off or a week off or whatever it is, or you finish up working for a few months, and with that money you then start traveling, you can go to places like Quebec, and go do some creeking or go run some more of the rivers there. Just kind of depends on what you're trying to access when you're not doing whatever job you're looking for, but I would say those are the main ones. Lastly, what's my opinion on a possible stakeout? As someone that only does C1 freestyle, is it possible to catch the waves in a C1? All those questions with Lorenz Weigel. When it comes to C1 at stakeout, in the end, here, let me pull up some. I got some stakeout clips so you can really see the different waves. When it comes to stakeout, there's a lot of options. There's a lot of waves. The thing about stakeout is you're never guaranteed all the waves, you're never guaranteed one wave or the other. It's called stakeout because there's a lot of days you're just going to do joy laps while you're waiting for the levels to change and a wave to come in. But when it comes to a C1 at stakeout, there are some smaller waves that you would definitely enjoy. But when it comes to the actual, a lot of the waves are either going to be really hard to catch at C1. A good example is, where'd it go? It was, I guess, ruined. But there's a lot of waves that are going to be harder to catch, and you're going to have a harder time staying on. But more important than that, there's going to be a lot of waves that just probably aren't going to be the safest to be in a C1. because you have a harder time not only maybe getting to the eddies, but a wave like Gladiator. Where'd it go? This is the hole that's below Gladiator's done. Where's some water and you need it. Half of the stream is just going to be me choking. 1 second. Nailed it. I was going so good too. So this is Gladiator. It's at the bottom of Coliseum. This is not the wave that you surf, but this is a hole that like covers most of the rapid. This is just downstream. Almost the top of the frame is the wave we are surfing. And Gladiator, it's a crazy wave to surf. It's hard to surf, but as soon as you flush, you need to get around this pour over. If you're in a C1, you're just not going to have as much power to get around the hole, and you absolutely do not want to go into this hole. And when it comes to Ruins, that other wave I just showed, sorry, can't work on that. So Ruins, it's a great wave. It's a lot of fun. It does go into flat water, but it's a big open flat water in the city of Ottawa that you are just gonna, like, if you were to like lose your paddle, come out of your boat or something, it's just not good there. And the thing about Ruins as well, as soon as you flush, you have to move really quickly in order to catch the eddy, or else you have to do like a 15-minute walk, or not quite 15. But so things like that, you would probably have less fun. But at the same time, there are a lot of really good waves that you can surf, like Molly. So this is Molly. It's like a super amazing wave when it's in just below a bridge, and it goes directly into flat water. So this is Molly. Man, I keep doing that. So it's like, as you can see, it's very safe downstream. So that is a wave that you would have an amazing time, and it's a very big wave, one of the best waves in the world. So this is one of those places you can have a great time. And another wave here called Cat is, where'd it go? This wave is super fun. It's kind of like an awkward wave to surf, but it has a little side pocket you can catch. But just below it on the left is another kind of pour over, a very small version of what Gladiator had. You would be able to surf it, but you probably have also a lot harder time maintaining surf because you're just so much less balanced in a C1 in places like this. But it doesn't mean that it's not possible. It doesn't mean that you can't have a great time. Like, you can surf something like Molly. You can try some of these waves within reason. You also, there are some smaller waves that come in. There's like Trailer Park Wave. There's stuff on the Ottawa. You can surf Minibus because that goes into essentially flat water downstream. You can surf White Dog in Quebec. So there are options. It's just, when it comes to some of those classic iconic waves, they either would be really hard to surf or just a little too sketchy. But I mean, Brooks Baldwin back in the day with YGP, he did a lot of, he was a C1er for freestyle. He did a lot of, mini bots and big bots and things like that. So it doesn't mean you won't have a good time. There's just some stuff you probably don't want to try to surf, or just have a lot harder time surfing it. Okay, moving on. All right, next one is, now we're moving on to, actually no, I got one more written question, then we're moving on to the few clips that were submitted. From Ben Quanley, you demonstrate unmatched grit, creativity, and bravery. Thank you very much. Beyond the technical skill, what is the single foundational key to your sustained resilience when facing inevitable failure or major risk? Wow, that's a big escalation from how to kickflip. When it comes to the stuff that I feel comfortable doing, or the things I have done, the main focus and the main thing that's most important for me, like if I'm doing something, here, let me pull up, where we go. So if I'm doing something like this in Puma in Chile, I got to do this 2 days after Maui. Like I've done a lot of big things like this, and I'm stoked on. The reason why I feel comfortable doing stuff like this, and I feel excited about doing stuff like this, or even, let's pull up. So even like doing the back freewheel on Leona, the way I handle the foundation, like in the question, is I have to be excited about the actual challenge itself, rather than just the idea of being able to say I did it, or just being at the bottom. Like the actual thing that I am doing needs to excite me. There needs to be something about it that's like, man, I love the challenge. Like for Leona, it was like, not only, the entrance is crazy, that's an amazing waterfall, but, I was excited about, like, how do I really make sure I'm lined up in the right spot to where I'm not too far to one side and land in the green water, but not so close to the river right wall that I do the back freewheel super weird and land flat, potentially break my back or something. So the reason why I'm able to do things like this is the actual thing that makes it a challenge excites me, and I think it would actually be fun, because if I'm not looking at it like that just looks like something I'm going to enjoy, it probably means that I don't want to do it, and I usually portage it, because there are a lot of, especially with things like this, there are a lot of risks when it comes to doing these things. And if you only do it just to be able to say you did it, that probably means you're either not respecting the challenge or the risks, but you also are probably being a little too chill about it, or you're really not paying attention to what is potentially dangerous. So like I'm constantly scared when it comes to doing these things, but the actual thing that I'm doing, I'm excited about, and I just make sure that is in the forefront of my mind, because what that does, it allows me to make sure that I'm always seeing the risks and I see the dangers, but those risks are worth it because I'm excited about the thing that I'm about to do. And then and I apply the same thing to competition, but like for competition, by making the whole process enjoyable, if I win, it's that much better. Or doing things like this, if it goes perfect, it's that much better. But if it goes wrong, it's easier to digest it, learn from it, and adapt, because I accepted those risks and I decided that the risk was worth it for how fun the challenge looked. Moving on. All right, so that's the last of the written questions here. That everyone that sent in questions, thank you so much. I mean, in the end, I hadn't even done one of these, and you guys sent in a lot. So, but now we're moving into submitted clips. I'm going to start with trying to pull these up. I'm going to start with. Okay, so starting with. Yep, right there, it's good. So this question with this clip was, any advice on paddling and media creation would be greatly appreciated. And this is him paddling at the Whitewater Park. Well, first off, when it comes to media creation, in the end, it's not a perfect science. You just go out and shoot, just constantly keep shooting and keep getting better, but also, forgot to turn the audio off. Thanks for the heads up. Let me know if it worked now. But when it comes to media creation, so for those that didn't hear it, the question was, any advice on my paddling and on media creation would be greatly appreciated. So when it comes to media creation, just pick something that you're excited about. Whether it's videos, photos, drone, just go out and shoot. It doesn't matter if you're at a whitewater park or going to the most scenic gorges. Just get out, create content. You not only get better at it, but you just keep doing it, and that can help, like I said earlier, create value and help you find a way to support yourself kayaking, but also your friend. Then when it comes to your actual kayaking, I mean, you're looking super solid. The one thing I will say when it comes to a whitewater park, and mainly from these clips, it might have just been this day, but when you're going down a lot of these rapids, you're constantly just forward paddling through the features. And what's really great about a whitewater park is that because you're able to do so many laps, that's a place that you can really think about working on particular maneuvers or moves. So for example, a lot of these things that you're paddling through, just taking stroke through the feature, what you could be working on is boofing over those features, whether sweep boofs or just lifting the bow, so that way you can get better at staying on top of the water and keeping your bow over things. So that way, and you just, by doing it in a whitewater park, it's a very controlled environment, so you can really focus on the techniques, and you'll be able to focus on what you're doing differently, because as soon as you're going into something that you're actually nervous about, you're more focused on that rapid and less of the technique. So a place like this, a lot of these features you're going through, try to see how dry you can keep your bow, or try catching some of the harder eddies, or surfing across the feature, or surfing the hole. But yeah, you're killing it, looking super good. All right, this is Bartek from Poland. He said, I did manage to learn my back deck roll on my right hand. It's maybe not perfect, but I keep my head dry. Even worked in the combat roll. But what is beyond me is to roll on the weaker hand. I can't keep the proper angle of the feather. Any tips or drills recommend for improving that? So when it comes to the back deck roll, that was a great back deck roll. The two things to keep in mind when it comes to, well, the main thing to keep in mind when it comes to a back deck roll, unless you are using a 0 degree paddle, which there's no reason to, because I use 30 degree and I find that's the best feather for just all around, whether creeking, freestyle, all that. But when it comes to the back deck roll, if you're a right-handed person, when you're back deck rolling to the left, your right hand is lined up with the blade, which means that you can easily feather and keep that paddle on the surface and keep your body dry. If you're going to be doing to your offside, the feather of the blade is harder to keep that blade on the surface, so that's probably why you're having issues with it potentially diving or just not able to keep the paddle on the surface as easy. So it is worth knowing that regardless how good you get at it, it is always going to be harder on the offside just because of the feather of the paddle. But when it comes to these flips and in, the two things I'm noticing is when you're going for the back deck roll, you're falling into the water and then doing it. The back deck roll itself is really good, but if you want to be able to keep your body a lot drier, your head is down above the water more, instead of falling down onto your blade, you actually want to go ahead and put your paddle on the surface. Thank you. You are definitely going to save me from that a lot. When you're, instead of putting your paddle up and then falling onto it, what you want to do is actually just put the paddle down on the water. Like, this is better than your offside, but the more the paddle is already on the surface of the water before you even flip, the more you're able to just kind of stiff arm and push off of the water, keep your whole head and body above the water. The more you fall onto it, the more likely you are to get your head and body into the water. But yeah, that's looking super good. All right, and I believe that is it for those, but we got some iPhone clip. All right, these are from Owen Steel. Question is, there's a rapid or a section of river there in front. I got this rapid crossing it out and down. I walked in, taking it to the line, a this level of water and a higher water level. So, first and foremost, I mean, slide was fun, but in the end, you know, I'm not going to be able to say one way or the other 100% on the video because literally you thought there's something you didn't like about it when you were there. So, but I swear I turn off all these sounds. Probably they have like 50 clips and you have to turn audio off on each individual one. Maybe there's a better technique for that, but sorry, I keep forgetting to turn the audio off. But when it comes to when it comes to you're seeing something in person that you didn't like, so regardless of what I see, always trust your instinct that there was something you didn't like about it, and there's never any shame in walking something regardless of it. If everyone else runs it and there's something you don't like, always trust your instinct. When it comes to this rapid, I mean, this does look like a water level. You could run it from this angle. There's definitely some stuff I can't tell from the video. What's nice about lower water, like the level you have here, is, you know, it's a little slower, less likely to have big holes and features, probably a better chance of being able to stop in some eddies than at high water. But at the same time, with slides like this, sometimes a little extra water does help kind of smooth it out or pad out some of the slides. So for this second part, it does look like you could run the left channel. I can't tell what the second part of the rapid is. This right side looks like it does have a pretty gnarly kind of rock. But again, off of the video, I can't say one way or the other. But in the end, you know, there's more that you can see that just trust your instinct. But in the end, sometimes a little extra water, what it can do is open up some more areas that you can run the rapid in a place like this. But again, more water might mean more pushy, and you potentially get washed into something that's bad. So in the end, trust your instinct. If you didn't like it, doesn't mean I can sit here and say there's something that looks perfect. Does look like you could run that left channel there, but in the end, unless you're there in person, always hard to tell because there's always something you can miss. And I believe that's the last of the submitted clips. All right, so I believe that is all of them. Yeah, not too bad. You guys stuck around for an hour and a half. I appreciate that. In the end, I'm going to try to keep doing these some more. If there's any questions that you guys have that you just want to put in the chat. I can answer a few more for a few minutes in case there's something I missed. I think somebody did say, do I have any suggested GoPro settings for the Hero 13? So for me, what I generally like to do, I shoot in 5K, but obviously that means I do like 12 terabytes a year. So it depends on how much hard drive space you really want. You can shoot 1080 if you want. But me personally, I like to shoot in at least 4K. I do 4K 120, but I also really like to shoot in Super View. Me personally, like some people don't like Super View as much. I really like Super View because for me, particularly for POV, I find Super View to be the most kind of really looks like the most POV. I find anything tighter, sometimes it's hard to tell what's happening as much. It's some people don't like it. I prefer it way more because I feel like you can actually see a lot more that's going on. And then the other thing I do as well, not everyone needs to do this, but I do shoot in D-Log where the colors are flatter. So that way just better, it gives you more freedom to edit it afterward. But unless you know you're going to want to have to go into Premiere or whatever it is, drop that LUT in every time, you just film in normal. And then I sometimes also shoot in 5K 60 instead of 4K 120, but in the end, just depends on how much hard drive space you want to take up and what you're really trying to shoot. What's really nice about being able to shoot in 5K and stuff now is you can take like screen grabs and have decent photos. So I like to shoot in 5K these days. I also sometimes like to go ahead and lock off the white balance to a certain color, so that way it's not constantly changing when you go from underwater to out of water, things like that, and it just kind of depends on the river that you're on. But yeah, in the end, kind of just depends on what you want to do. But yeah, I mainly shoot 5K 60 Super View, and I do shoot in D-Log. All right, for Class 3-4, do you prefer bungee or ran skirt? I only ever use a ran skirt. I personally feel that unless you are only doing freestyle in places like NOC or small features, or you're someone that has a very hard time getting your skirt on, I say use ran for everything, just because a ran skirt is a lot safer and less likely to implode. It stays on a lot better. Doesn't matter if you're running waterfalls, big water, anything like that. Stakeout, I always have a ran skirt because you might, if your skirt blows, you're at the top of those big rapids, that could be super bad, super dangerous. So me personally, I just use a ran skirt for everything. Some people do like bungee skirts because it's easier to get on, especially if it's cold. I just say ran skirt for everything, especially if you're running anything that you feel a little more nervous about, or just anything with any consequence, particularly if the river is continuous. Because even if you're running like a small creek, like a low volume creek, if you do a 5-foot boof and you get sent back into the hole, the flow landing on your deck could pop a bungee skirt and maybe not a ran skirt, but it can also sometimes pop a ran skirt, but you have a way, way better chance of your skirt staying on when it's a ran. Bungee skirts are just a lot easier to implode. So I recommend ran for everything. I had some flat hits the last weeks. I got really bad back pain. Do I train along kayaking? I don't do a lot of stuff outside of kayaking. I mean, I play disc golf with my dad every day. I go do active things. My dad and a lot of my friends spend a lot more time in the gym than I do. I generally like to just go kayaking as much as possible because when you're kayaking, you're using all the muscles that you need for kayaking. So I just like to kayak as much as possible. And then if there's times where, I have some more time off the water or the river's dry, then I'll consider, doing more disc golf or maybe going into the gym. But realistically, I just try to go kayaking as much as possible. And I'd rather kayak for 4 hours on Class 2 than 2 hours in the gym. Now, there will be times I'll probably have to be in the gym more down the line, but I just like to kayak as much as possible. So I'm just using all the muscles that I need for kayaking. When it comes to what was the question? For the back pain? Yeah, I would say they suck. Ribs and backs suck. So when it comes to that, it just depends on what type of hurt. If it's muscles or if it's muscles or if it's bone. Like I don't know what it is, but I would say one of the most important things when it comes to small little injuries is you don't want to overwork it. You want to know where the pain is. You want to know if you like get little muscle things. You don't want to, just keep abusing and making it worse. But the one thing you really don't want to do when it comes to those small things is sometimes by, you kind of tweak a little muscle. If you just take 2 months off and then get back, that's probably not as valuable as, working through it, still maintaining the muscle, potentially, you don't want to overwork it, but you still want to be moving your body in some way to work through something. But it depends. I'm not a doctor or anything like that. It just kind of depends on the type of injury, the type of thing you're looking to do. And that's just kind of the way that my dad has always approached it whenever he works through injuries. A full stop is you want to rest it, you want to make sure you're not making it worse, but at the same time you also want to maintain whatever you're trying to work through. So in the end, just kind of listen to your body, just don't make it worse, but try to continue going out and doing some flat water, maintaining the movement and the muscles is super important, even when things are a little bit tweaked. But in the end, I'm not a doctor. Somebody said, what's the difference between bungee or a ram skirt? So a bungee is, as it sounds, it's a bungee. It's much more elastic. That's the part that actually locks over the cockpit. A ram skirt is much thicker. It's actually got and it's much stiffer, and it actually just allows a better grip on the cockpit. And when the skirt potentially implodes, it's just much less likely to come off the boat. I don't think I really explained that very well, but what's next? Would you recommend pushing with the outside or inside of the blade when trying air screws? When it comes to learning, I know we talked about the whole kickflip situation where it's you want to push with the backside, but when it comes to air screws, you do want to do the opposite, because when you get on bigger waves, you start going for panhandles and stuff, you're pushing on the blade. But when it comes to learning the air screw, you do want to do a proper back deck roll, because when you're going for the air screw, the most important thing, let me just go ahead and pull up an iPhone clip while we're doing this. Actually, maybe I'll go ahead. So the most important thing when it comes to an air screw, and the way to actually be able to air screw, not only to make the rotation fast, but also keep it straight, is when you go to air screw, you want to keep your paddle as close to your neck and body as possible, because the further back on the boat you are, and the more that your paddle is locked in, that allows the boat to rotate a lot straighter, because as soon as you are reaching out or you're sitting up, what that does is that actually that pulls crushing it. Water bottle next time. But what that does is that when you sit up, that pulls your knees to your chest, and that's what makes you land sideways. Wow. Killing it. Half of the stream is just me choking. But yeah, again, I might as well use the FOMO for this, but yeah, so that's the main thing. Obviously, I can't make the body move, but when you're learning the air screw, by keeping that paddle back, what that does, that allows the boat to rotate a lot straighter. As soon as you start sitting up or reaching out with your paddle, that is what causes people to land sideways. So if you want to rotate back, straight, tuck that paddle in as much as possible, and then look for the sky on the other side of the boat. Hopped in late. Don't know if anyone asked something similar. What is the boat design life cycle with the addition of TAD to JK? How much R&D you guys doing? What CAD program do you use? I'd love to do boat design or similar in the future. That's awesome. So the way the life cycle of a boat works, so for those that don't know, Jackson Kayak, up until last year, we were, our CAD designer was the same, David Knight, who's the CAD designer with my dad since the 90s. When my dad left Jackson in 2020, we still worked with David Knight up until the Flow. He did end up leaving Jackson Kayak after the Flow. When we did the Clutch, our actual R&D team in-house, we shaped that boat. But then the following boat after is the Antics 3, which is the first CAD that we got to do with Tad Dennis, which is super exciting because I've known Tad forever, and we talk about boat design so much, and it's something that he's always wanted to do. And so to get the opportunity to work with him on the Antics 3 was awesome. So basically the team that makes it, since my dad left, the team that designed the boat with the CAD designers, myself, Stephen Wright, Clay Wright, and Nick, and collectively we work together to decide what we want to do next and kind of the ways to improve and the things we want to see in the next boat, and then we work with the CAD designer to put that into reality. And the Antics Tree is the first time we got to do that with Tad, which was super fun, super awesome, and he crushed it with the CAD design. We all came together and we're really, really fired up on that boat, and really looking forward to working with Tad a lot more in the future. And the way the life cycle works, it basically, our core team will reach out to team members as well, what they think they'd like to see next, but in the end, our core team, we figure out what we want to do. We work with the CAD designer to constantly talking through it for over a couple months. We talk through what we want to see. We make tweaks to the CAD. We make tweaks to what we want to see. We talk through the kind of end goal of how we want the boat to perform. Once the CAD is done, we send that off. And basically what gets made is it looks like cement, but it's basically, it's foam with some form of material on top. I forget what it's called right now. Which is stupid. I used to know the name, I forget right now. But it basically just looks like a cement version of the boat. And what we do is once we get that into the factory, it usually takes about 4 weeks after we send in the CAD to get it. Our R&D department will make a fiberglass mold off of that boat. And what that does, it allows us to make usually about 3 or 4 prototypes of that boat. And then we paddle that boat for 2 weeks, something like that, and we either decide, this is essentially almost perfect as is, and we make some small tweaks in-house, or if it just kind of missed the mark on what we wanted out of that design, we will then start the CAD process all over again. It always sucks when that happens, but in the end, that's just what we do if the boat doesn't feel right. But if the boat is almost there, we're able to make some small changes in-house with our R&D department, and then once that's done, we send that to the mold makers. We get the aluminum mold made, usually takes 3-4 months. Once that's done, I get the first pre-production boat. We make sure it feels good, and then I go and paddle at 5 a.m. because I have to keep the boat hidden until the launch, and go film for the month or two, and then we launch it with the promo. Like generally, we usually will start in the past, when we usually start over the winter, we start talking about it, we usually prototype early in the year, and then we launch in September. How many times a week would he say you kayak? I try to kayak every day if I can. It just depends on where I am, the type of kayaking I'm doing, or if there's, sometimes there's just stuff I have to work on. I try to kayak every day if I can, but like right now, my home spot just down the street, it's running, 2 hours a day. I still try to go. We went out yesterday with my nephew and some friends and stuff like that. So it just depends on where I'm at. Like at the Zambezi, I try to make sure to paddle every day if I can, because paddle for 3 hours in the morning and then have all afternoon to go do things with Chloe, go to check out the animals, to go spar, whatever it is. And in 2020, I paddled for 59 days straight at the Zambezi. And then sometimes, after a few days of, big days at stakeout, I'll maybe take a day off to do some editing, or I'll just go do a joy lap. Just depends on if we're waiting for rain, if there's somewhere else to be kayaking, or if I'm trying to, take a day with Chloe, or, do things like this, like do editing and things like that. So depends on where I'm at, if I'm waiting for rain, waiting for dam bleaching, whatever it is. I try to kayak as much as possible. And do I have any advice for learning a flat water double pump? So when it comes to the double pump, for those that know, that's essentially just doing a cartwheel in flat water. A lot of people, when they are trying to go for the double pump, they'll usually just kind of slam that bow down and push as hard as they can on the paddle, but then the boat just kind of stops on the surface of the water. The key with the double pump, what you want to do is you really want to make sure not only do you lift that bow up to get that momentum, but when you're trying to get the bow through the water, the key is think more on pushing your feet through the water and less about how hard you're pushing on the blade. You do want to push hard on the blade, but that's not all the work. The main thing you want to focus on, the difference between being able to get that bow through the water, is actually pushing your feet through the water as you're doing the bow end. So that's what's really important. So again, get that speed forward. I don't have a double pump clip here right now, unfortunately, but really think about lifting that bow as high as you can. Then as that bow comes down, get that big backstroke in, but really think about pushing your heels and your feet through the water on top of also doing that big, powerful backstroke. How frequently do I hope to join us here? My hope is to I'd like to do twice a month. There are going to be times that I might do more. There might be times that, I'm traveling international. I'm spending 4 weeks in Chile, whatever. I might not have time to do it. Still figuring out exactly how often, but it's just going to be dependent on where I'm at and the time frame. Like for right now, not a lot of water right now. I'm basically home through the holidays. I'm going to try to do 1 or 2 more before I go to the Zambezi after Christmas. I'm going to try to do 1 or 2 more like this, but I think next week, I'm thinking maybe Tuesday. It depends on plans and things like that. I'm hoping Tuesday I'll be able to do, I want to do river breakdown lives. It's going to be less like about answering questions, and I want to do a stream where I break down different rivers, so that way when people are going to those rivers, there's information they might need, whether it's portages, where to set safety, how to run rapids, like I'll do the upper Halasingo, lower Halasingo. I'll probably do Upper Cherry, West Cherry, things like that. And I'm going to try to do the first one next week. Just depends on plans with the family and things like that, obviously going into Thanksgiving. But I'm hoping for this type of live, I'm hoping to do twice a month at least. But it just depends on the time of year, where I'm at, if I'm traveling, expedition, things like that. But yeah, that's went fairly smooth the first try. There's still some transition stuff, and definitely need to, even when I put in 50 clips, got to make sure that I remember to turn the volume off. So I'm glad everyone caught me on that. I didn't even realize until I did one of the first test live that the audio was showing from the other clip. But yeah, I think I'm going to wrap this one up. We're coming up on an hour and 45. If you stuck around this whole time, appreciate you guys listening to me talk for that long. I'll do any last questions before I wrap this up. Looks like I have one more. What would you say is a good way to find people for me to kayak class 3-4 rivers if I'm 15? In the end, age isn't always about everything. It's just more how skilled you are, the type of rivers you're trying to do, and whether or not you are in a place that you can make the best decision. The only thing that can sometimes deter that people get nervous about paddling with someone younger, one, a lot of times they want to paddle with the parents or somebody that they trust can take care of you, because in the end, when you're 15, they're responsible for you, and some people don't feel comfortable with someone that young unless they actually know them or know the parents are okay with it. And also, sometimes when you're 15, 16, 17, you can get really excited about I want to run everything before you're ready for it. So that's why it's really important, whoever you do end up paddling with, that there's somebody that can tell you, hey, I know you want to run this, but you're not ready for it. Growing up, my dad would always do that if he didn't feel I was ready, or Clay Wright would do it. I was always with people that, I'd be like, I want to run this, and they'd be like, no. And I'd be like, what? But that was the right decision at the time. A good example is when I was 8 years old or 9, we ran, oh gosh, what's the name of the creek? It's next to the Potomac, the one that goes into, oh my gosh, what's the name of the creek? Either way, it's got a stout rapid that's like a stout hole that kind of goes in and it's drop into a stout wall, but mainly there's a big hole at the top of the rapid. And when I was 9, I weighed 30 pounds, and I had that little orange kid's boat. I would never have been able to make it through the hole, but I really wanted to run it, but my dad was like, no, and I actually cried on the whole portage because I couldn't believe he wouldn't let me run it. And there's a photo of my dad from the 90s in our house of him running that rapid, and I look at it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was the right choice. But in the end, it's just the most important thing, regardless of age, you just need to make sure that you're with people that are comfortable taking care of you, will make sure that you're making the best decisions possible, and just, yeah, because in the end, growing up, I did South Silver and stuff when I was 11 with my dad with the big crew. Some of them thought it was dumb that I was running it, but the people that were with us, they trusted my dad's decision, but also they trusted my skill level to do it. Or at least that's my understanding, because I was able to go with them. But just make sure you're actually ready for the stuff you want to do, and make sure the people that are with you are comfortable paddling with someone younger, or if you have your parents with you, or someone that knows your parents, just because that can sometimes be the difference between somebody being comfortable paddling with a younger paddler. Yeah, the Burning Lock 5 had a good response to that. Any tips on the Palgine River? I'm not sure Are you referring to like how to get to it, certain rapids? I'm not really sure which part of the Palgine you're referring to. Maybe you could clarify, but at the very least, I'll still try to answer it now. When it comes to the Palgine, the upper Palgine particularly is an amazing river for a lot of just for fun, but when it comes to working on technique and really learning how to creek, the reason why Annual does his classes and his trips there, because it's like there's a couple really nice boops. They're relatively safe for the challenge of them, which means that you can work on your technique. Really easy to lap, and just a lot of really fun drops. But the main thing with the upper Palgine, the tip for paddling it is, it's worth being in a boat that you feel comfortable staying on top of the water, like a good creek boat. It's worth being with someone that knows it, so that way they know where to set safety, but also where to portage, and also just tips on running the rapids. And then when it comes to the upper Palgine, that's a great place to work on a lot of great techniques. So I 10 out of 10 recommend upper Palgine if you haven't before. And maybe on one of the river breakdowns, maybe I'll do the upper Palgine. It's a shorter run, obviously, but still a lot of fun info to share. Well, I think I'm just about to wrap this up, unless anybody has any last minute questions they'd like to cover. Yeah, and in the end, thank you guys for sticking around for this. If you're ready, we're here for this first one. Appreciate just kind of blindly following me in. I beat her through a lot of it, but I think I can only get better. I got to start somewhere. I'll get better at the audio thing next time, I promise. And yeah, really appreciate you guys hanging out. Actually, one quick question I had for you guys, because on the system I'm using, it obviously looked super smooth for me. One question I have for you guys is, how much did the clips cut out a lot for you, or were the clips playing smoothly? Because that was the one thing. It took me a lot of try to get the to optimize the performance to actually be able to play the clip. But in theory, I'm hoping the clips played smoothly. But if they weren't, definitely let me know, because I need to re-optimize it, because there's no point on talking through the clips I'm playing if the clips are like not working. Okay. Glad to hear they're playing smoothly, because that was my biggest question mark. It took me a long time kept having to drop the quality, but I'm glad to know they ran smoothly. The only thing that wasn't smooth was my playing the audio or constantly changing the clip. But all right, yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out with this. This was awesome. I hope you guys had a good time. I hope I answered all your questions. And thanks for listening to me talk for an hour and 45 minutes. And I will, regardless of whether I get to do more once a month, twice a month, I'll always post on my Instagram when I'm going to be doing the next live. And I'll also post, if I know there's a day that I'm going to be doing one, like today, I'll go ahead and post on my Twitch a schedule as much as I can. But I'll make sure that people know as early on as possible, and try to keep getting smoother. But yeah. Thanks for watching this video, guys, and I'll catch you guys on the river.